The back. I was not expecting that. And since I didn't, after 22 years, 5 months, 6 days, and who cares how many hours, my happily married existence came to an end. All because I was too lazy to go into the kitchen and take my phone off the charger and I wanted to order a pizza. My spouse's phone was oddly on the end table across from our couch. Surprisingly, I say, because it's not often that that object isn't tucked into a pocket or fastened to her hand. Now that I think about it, especially during the past few months, when she's been leaving the room to text rather than converse. Though I thought it strange that the upstairs shower was running on a late set afternoon, I really didn't give it much attention until I took her phone and ordered carry-out from our favorite pizza joint. Since we hadn't talked about our evening plans and there wasn't anything cooking in the kitchen, I would generally order pasta for her and get a pizza for myself. However, the phone asked for a password when I pressed the home button to unlock it. To be honest, I gave the phone a firm squeeze in retribution after looking at it as though it had just cursed at me. I was like, damn you, iPhone, but then I wondered what the hell password would be. The more significant reason why it was locked hit me in the face only while I was attempting to guess. For years, we had been using identical iPhones, and neither of us had ever locked them. It had been maybe 8 months since I'd last used her phone to check the weather, and it wasn't locked at that point. Given my amateurish interest in computers and phones, I saw the password request as a challenge. After giving it some thought, I entered the final 4 digits of her social security number since I knew that was the combination she had established for our house safe, which contained all of our vital documents, including our passports and birth certificates. The phone instantly opened and her messages screen appeared. Fiona had contacted Jan Jefferson, her best friend, last before climbing into the shower, as I saw her friend at the top of the list. Even though I knew she was private, I probably shouldn't have peered at the message tree, but since she was my wife, I didn't think it would be too much of a concern if I did so to find out what she and Jan had been messaging about. Is it really so secret what an expensive pair of shoes costs? Life changer. If I had been standing, the sudden ache in my chest would have knocked me down. I began to inhale deeply, as if I were a man suffering from asphyxia. Things went awry. I wasn't sure if I fainted, but when I regained consciousness, I saw that tears had formed in my eyes, making it difficult for me to concentrate. To put it briefly, I had discovered the reason behind my wife's visit to the shower and that her scheduled activities with a man named Neville weren't their first date. When I heard the shower stop, I had finished reading the entire discussion and was about to click through to see if there were any more. I then closed the app, secured her phone, and placed it back exactly where I had found it. I fell back down onto my end of the sofa and stared into it, feeling as though someone had just hit me in the stomach with a baseball bat. Nothingness. A while later, Fiona entered the family room after coming downstairs. I felt it was a great touch that she was dressed properly without being garish. Her innocence virtually oozed from her every word as she said, "Hey, babe, I'm going to meet up with Jan and the girls tonight. You don't have a problem with that, do you?" I kept a close eye on her as she moved around the space. I certainly couldn't imagine her feeling guilty in the slightest. I said, trying to seem as impartial as possible, "I'm good with that, sweetie. I'll just order a pizza and chill watching the Twins play the Rangers tonight. It may be an acting game for two. By the way, you look good. I've always liked that blue dress on you. Maybe I should come along to fight off any guy who might get the wrong idea," I said. When I stated it, she didn't realize I could see a slight frown on her face. I was aware that she wouldn't want my vanilla ass to go along with us tonight. She had emailed her pal earlier, saying, "I really do love him, Jan, but he's so vanilla. Neville is anything but. I get excited just thinking about him." She took her phone from the end table and walked out the door, most likely hurrying to avoid my having to follow through on my promise to accompany her. I was aware that she was going to have dinner with Neville at the Red Lion before returning to his flat for a few hours of passionate sex. This vanilla person was going to show up before the night was done, no matter how much I tried to play along. I sat back on my couch and thought back on my marriage, knowing I had some free time. I would have described our marriage as almost ideal until recently. I had no idea that Fiona was dissatisfied with my performance and felt I was dull in bed. I must not have been too dull in bed if her screams were any clue. I always made sure she was never left wanting. How long this romance had been going on was just one of the many questions that were racing through my mind. After 22 years of marriage, I realized very quickly that we would not live to reach 25 years old. I was a certified public accountant by trade, and most likely by nature as well. I was quiet and analytical, not prone to irrational outbursts of rage, which could be why my wife finds me uninteresting. But she knows that I can be passionate in life and in the bedroom because we've been married for a long time and have raised 2 kids together. My rage was building like a stone hearth oven, and I was bewildered and hurt. Since my wife and her partner had scheduled a 6 p.m. appointment, I arrived at the Red Lion parking lot's rear at 7 p.m. to observe the door. Since I didn't know Neville other than by his first name, my goal was to follow the two to his house. I thought back to the moment I saw the woman who would become my wife for the first time. At a Sunday party at my church, she was creating ice cream sundaes, and me and a few other guys fell in love with the curvaceous brunette with green eyes right away. That day, I had to push my way past a few other young males before I could speak with her, but it was definitely worth the wait. Not only was she attractive, but she was also intelligent and articulate. That day, I obtained her number and name, but I didn't give her a call for 2 weeks. That would give all the pretenders time to get out of my way, I reasoned. Our courtship lasted for not too long. Before I asked her to marry me, we dated for 8 months. After 8 months, we were married. 2 years later, we had our son Larry, and 18 months after, our daughter Delilah. Now that both of my kids were in college, I realized that this could have been the beginning of the end for my marriage. Fiona told me I was being paranoid when I tried to talk to her about how I felt like she was drifting away from me. Daniel, you term yourself paranoid. I was taken aback when Fiona, 47, emerged from the restaurant at approximately 7:20, trailed closely by a tall, fit young man who appeared to be perhaps 20 years her junior. I wasn't anticipating a child, but I also wasn't entirely sure what her lover would look like. He must have been attractive, even if I am not very good at judging men in general. His hair was a mess of dark, wavy hair. He appeared to be 3 inches and 30 pounds heavier than me. I questioned whether his physique was larger than mine given that he was having an affair with my wife. I watched as they shared a kiss and he got into his car to drive away. Knowing that the last thing they expected was to be followed by me, in my plain car, of course, I kept a reasonable distance behind them. After a 15-minute drive, they parked up in front of an apartment building, and the guy let my wife in by putting his arm around her waist. I noticed a light turning on in a third-floor apartment a minute later. I didn't feel compelled to get there right away because I knew they had done this at least a few times. I wanted to give them an opportunity to get going before calling it quits. I waited for approximately 15 minutes, getting angrier every minute, until I walked to the door of the apartment I thought belonged to Neville. My wife's loud voice and subsequent cries for more were proof of it. How in the world? While she acts like she's in a church at home, I can hear her screaming in the hallway. After I kept hammering on the door, Neville, dressed in a robe, answered it with a disgruntled expression. There were now 2 of us, and I launched myself at the man, hitting him hard in the nose to send him reeling backward and gushing blood from his face. Then, I attacked him again, hitting him hard in the chest to put him on his butt. After stomping through the apartment past the unconscious bastard, I made my way to what I assumed to be the bedroom, where I discovered my seemingly nude wife hiding beneath the sheets. Although she was aware of the brief altercation at the door, she was unaware of the specifics, so when I showed up in the bedroom doorway, her eyes grew as large as an owl's. She parted her lips, but nothing came out. I yelled, spittle shooting out of my mouth, "Don't come home. You don't live with me any longer. Call me in a few days and I'll let you come by and get your stuff." As I started to go, she answered back, having at last found her voice. Then she abruptly stopped saying, No, wait, it's not. I guess it is. But we need to talk. Truer words were never spoken, woman, but this is neither the time nor the place. I was going to stroll past Lover Boy, who was splayed out on the floor, groaning into his hands. I smashed my foot down on his bare midsection, still full of adrenaline, and heard what sounded like broken ribs. I entered his apartment without shutting the door behind me, got in my car, and headed home. The last time I fought someone, I got my butt beat in 6th grade, so I guess having anger and surprise on my side worked out nicely for me. Even though Neville was much bigger than I was, I guess it only took me 10 seconds to place him on his back. As I parked my car in my garage, I thought, not bad for a vanilla guy. Still feeling a little angry, I took a bottle and poured 3 fingers worth into a standard drinking glass. I then proceeded to stomp all over my house, smashing various trinkets Fiona had purchased by hurling them against the nearest wall. Then, in our bedroom, I took my favorite knife from my bedroom end table and stuck it through our wedding picture. The sound of the doorbell brought me back to earth, even if I might have caused more harm. To be honest, I wasn't shocked to see 2 policemen at my door. I gestured for them to come in as I opened the door. The first cop waved me back and then came in, his hand still resting on his pistol. The second cop came in next, likewise with his hand resting on his gun. I observed as they both carefully examined the mess I had made of broken knickknacks on the walls and flooring. According to the police, Neville filed a complaint, which prompted their response. It appeared that he had 2 broken ribs and a shattered nose. The woman who was at the flat with him told the police that it was me, her husband, even though Neville wasn't sure who the attacker was. I found it quite considerate of the police not to address me as her spouse. We understand you were completely justified in beating him senseless, but we can't allow every jilted husband to exact revenge with his fist, I was told by the initial officer. He wants you arrested and brought up on charges. I mutely answered, okay, I get it, but just to be clear, I didn't beat him, I just hit him twice, in the hopes that being truthful might mitigate my punishment. After giving me a close-up look, both policemen seemed impressed. The second officer said, I guess he just picked the wrong woman's husband then. When the cop stated I may have a few minutes to finish some personal work on my computer, I discreetly consented to go with them. I transferred half of our savings and checking into an account that was solely in my name while they were closely observing me, and I subsequently paid off and terminated our 2 joint credit cards. The first cop said, "I wish I had done that first when I caught my wife cheating on me. It took me almost a year before the courts made her give me back my share. I had to live with my parents just to get by. Well, if I don't miss my guess, I'm not going to have to worry about my living arrangements for a while." Laughed I guess Loverboy didn't like having his clock cleaned by a vanilla old guy. I observed the two officers exchanging glances at what they perceived to be my cryptic remark. As it was, I didn't feel compelled to tell them the joke. When Fiona contested the divorce I filed while I was incarcerated, I was at a total loss. I felt this would have been ideal for Fiona because I was going to be in jail for some time. When Fiona paid me a visit in jail, she said, "I love you, Dan. I have some feelings for Neville, but I don't love him like I love you. How can you profess to love me when you've been cheating on me for I don't know how long?" I asked. "Neville excites you. You get excited just thinking about meeting up with him. Me, I'm just vanilla. I no longer excite you. I'm just here." "As what? Your backup plan?" I saw numerous expressions pass her face, astonishment being the most prominent. When I showed her the Reader's Digest version of the text exchange she had with her best friend, Jan, that I had seen, she was taken aback because she had no idea I had seen her phone. "I didn't plan on this, Dan. It just happened. He's a co-worker and a friend. He's a really nice guy. I think you two would get along if you had met under different circumstances. We were probably lucky to be separated by a table since I could have really screwed him over." I barked through my teeth. "How long, Trace? Were there others?" "I guess about 8 months now. Neville is the only one," she replied. "He revitalized me. You and I are the same old. He was something new. He's forceful, and I like that in him. I had been feeling so old and out of sorts with the kids gone. That being said, it doesn't mean I no longer adore you. I really do. Dan, I don't want to get divorced. I find that completely incomprehensible. It is not possible to have both a spouse and a lover. Fiona, that's not how marriage operates. Our marriage, anyway. Well, it looks like you're going to spend some time in jail. How about you just postpone the divorce until you're out of jail?" she asked. "Consider it. In prison, nothing has to change for you. When you leave, we can decide all the important things." "Why did you have to beat him so badly, Dan?" "I didn't beat him. Why does everyone keep saying that?" "Vanilla Guy only hit him twice," I said. "Only twice. He's so much bigger than you. And younger. And fitter," she replied. "Rage is the great equalizer, babe." In surprise, the guy went down like a sack of. She pressed her lips together and exhaled deeply through her nose. She was clearly thinking carefully. She questioned, "How did you find out about us? I thought we were so careful." "Did you really just ask me that question?" I yelled. Since I would not be moving for a few years, she declined to sign the divorce papers. After 6 months, I learned that she had brought Neville into our house with her on a visit from my son. That was the day I got into a brawl in the jail library, sending a fellow prisoner to the infirmary and earning myself a month in isolation. "He's not such a bad guy, Dad, and he keeps Mom from being lonely," stated Eric. "If he's not such a bad guy, then how come I'm in here and he's sleeping with that cheating skank you call your mother?" I posed a direct question. In a sense, we remained married. My goal was to file for divorce. She declined to put her signature. "Do you really believe she can live with her partner?" With a groan, Eric stood up and left us there. My children came once a month, trading visits. Sherry, my daughter, unintentionally revealed another bombshell to me 6 months later when she commented on how adorable her mother was with her expanding baby bulge. "What did you just say?" "Sure." She was talking away when I intervened. She asked, "About which thing, Dad?" "You mother's growing baby bump." Sherry's red face turned red as her jaw fell wide. "Oh, I see. I was not allowed to comment on that." She asked, "Can't we just act like I never said anything?" "Baby, you might have just given me the keys to the kingdom," I said. "Start talking." I learned that Fiona was 3 months pregnant with Neville's child 5 minutes later. Even after Neville moved in, it appears that she wasn't taking her birth control pills consistently after I was sent in jail. I was talking to my lawyer on the phone 5 minutes later. Fiona was adamantly opposed to the divorce, so our case judge had been hesitant to approve it while I was in jail. However, when he learned that Fiona was now expecting a child with another man, he made a complete 180-degree turn and approved the divorce on my terms without needing Fiona's signature. Additionally, my lawyer obtained an injunction that forbade my name from appearing on Fiona's child's birth certificate. It goes without saying that she was upset. I could not care less if she was happy. For the first time in 778 days, I was free when the gate opened, and I set out. I was serving a 5-year sentence for third-degree assault, with roughly 3 years of probation remaining. But I had made up my mind not to return inside unless I caused big trouble. Knowing that I hadn't been entirely truthful with the parole board a few weeks prior, I laughed to myself. I expressed to them my sincere regret for the things I did to earn my jail sentence, and my determination to never make the same mistake again. Actually, the only thing I regretted was getting arrested. I would do it again in a heartbeat if given the chance, and perhaps perform worse. Beyond the gates was my attorney, ready to assist me. We exchanged pleasantries, got into his vehicle, and he took me to my new residence, a 1-room apartment across town, in the same place where my life as I knew it had been shattered. I did not willingly go back to the scene of the crime. Simply put, I reasoned that it would be easier to obtain work there for a former prisoner than to have to explain my background to a stranger. After all, people knew why I had served time in prison. For me, such tactic proved to be effective. Probably since the proprietor is also an ex-con, I was hired by Wilkie Outdoor Concepts, an excavation and landscaping company, 2 days later. In any case, I was glad to have the gainful employment. My nasty ex-wife, her lover, or the baby daddy were people I knew I would eventually run across, which was the biggest drawback to my plan. I truly didn't want to return to prison and serve out the remainder of my sentence, and it would be difficult to control my temper. I traced a 3-inch scar with my fingers from the side of my right eyebrow to the center of my cheek. It served as a physical reminder to me all the time of the worst period of my life and the fact that I made it through. I believed I had the world 3 years prior. I had 2 wonderful kids in college, a wonderful job, a gorgeous house, and a loving wife of 22 years who was my other half. Prior to my discovery, my spouse had been unfaithful to me for a few months, having an affair with a younger, more attractive man who enabled her to overcome her feelings of being unwanted and old after our children moved off for college. A piece of advice for the younger generation: resist the urge to strike your spouse's partner. While it seemed fantastic at the time, I ended up spending more than 2 years behind bars. Just so you know, I broke both his nose and 2 ribs. I worked a 3-season job, meaning that layoffs occurred in the winter. But while we were together, I was making good money, so I could survive on unemployment and careful budgeting. I could have easily returned to working as a secret accountant in someone's back office, but I liked the physicality of landscaping labor and the fact that it didn't need much thought. It was, in fact, nearly the complete opposite of what I had done before at work. My complexion had actually turned a bit darker and more reddish after 3 years of working outside, and I had lost most of my body fat while gaining roughly 20 pounds of muscle. As I approached 50, I was arguably in the best physical shape of my life, with noticeable abdominal muscles and larger arms, chest, and back muscles. My once closely clipped dark brown hair had gone to seed, leaving me with a shoulder-length mess of curls the color of salt and pepper that I sometimes drew back into a ponytail on windy days to improve my vision. I went so far as to get a tattoo on my left forearm, which is around 5 inches in size and features the word vanilla written in cursive. It was a wake-up call for me to be less of a softie and more assertive in my life, even if it meant upsetting other people occasionally. I will never forget my ex-wife criticizing me in a text message to her friend, claiming that her partner didn't treat her well like me and instead took what he wanted, and how much it made her feel attracted to me. I made the decision to live up to that guy's expectations, but I still lacked the courage to get Duck-U emblazoned on my arm. I would have to use vanilla for my purpose. About a year after being released from prison, I got the tattoo. It's been 2 years since I received it, and I've had to explain its importance around 20 times. It is you, Dan Washburn. One Thursday night, as I sat at the bar at DeVito's Place, a quiet bar about 15 minutes from my flat, I heard a really lovely voice to my left ask, "Fiona's ex, aren't you?" I had a solid excuse to be social while I watched Thursday night football and had a few beers because DeVito's had Peacock and I didn't. I didn't know this woman very well, but I knew the voice belonged to Jan, my ex-wife's best friend. Yes, that Jan Jefferson. Although I knew that she had not supported nor opposed her friend's affair in her texts with Fiona, I still held her partially responsible for the breakdown of my marriage. Nevertheless, it was a case of shooting the messenger, as it was through those texts that I became aware of Fiona's extramarital affair. "Yeah, that's me," I answered the attractive, tall, and slender woman. What gave it away, the tattoo on my forearm or the one on my forehead? I suppose this place doesn't have the best lighting. She looked intently at her forehead and remarked, "I can't see anything there." Looking carefully enough, you can see that it says schmuck. I felt that my marriage was wonderful. She disagreed with me, I remarked, a hint of snarl in my voice. "Jan, you look great. What is the pleasure owed to me? Would you rather point out my ex-wife's adultery to me or tell me I was foolish to file for divorce?" I asked. I saw the smile turn to a frown on Jan's face, and then I just ran my eyes all over her body. She was flaunting a significant deal of tan skin and a dark blue sundress with spaghetti straps that terminated approximately 4 inches above her knees. I had to agree that she'd taken good care of herself. We were around the same age. If the chance had come up, I would have done her. She responded with a hint of humor. "I could give you a twirl if you'd like." "Fine, let's watch how this develops." I gestured for her to spin around with my index finger. She smiled as she carried out the action. A smile crossed my face as the sundress lifted a little higher as she did. "Good, very wonderful legs," I remarked, speculating about how they might appear encircling my body. She frowned a little at me, and for a moment I had to ask myself if she could read my thinking. Although we didn't really know one another, I was mostly Fiona's friend. I still wanted to stop over and check on you. "I understand that the past few years haven't exactly been pleasant for you," she said. "Now, I'm doing all right. It has taken some time, but nearly everyone in the community has been quite supportive. By now, everyone is aware of the whole incident, and I have received a great deal of support. Nobody handles me like they're criminals. Well, an ex-offender, I remarked. To be clear, I disapproved of Fiona's affair. Although I was aware of it, I didn't support it. I always thought it was wrong since you seemed like a kind man. She insisted she loved you and that if you never found out, she wasn't hurting you, even after I informed her that she ought to have filed for divorce from you before she started to fool around. Because my ex cheated on me before I divorced him, we got into a fight over it. Did you ever consider telling me? I inquired. She let her eyes drop and reddened deeply. No, she mumbled. I knew you very briefly, and she was a friend of mine. You may argue that I was blindly faithful. Jan and a couple of her single pals were in the bar. I accepted her invitation to sit at their table. My ex was pals with Mary Jo and Ellie, the other women. We had a pleasant evening of conversation. The only subjects I couldn't talk about were my ex and my divorce. At one point in the evening, Jan observed, I really like this new look you've got going on. Very. Not vanilla. I said something in response. Jan said, this is definitely not vanilla, as she traced the design on my underarm. However, some of us don't necessarily view vanilla negatively. It indicates that you're a decent guy to some of us. Furthermore, if you catch my drift, decent guys don't always have to come in last. Her buddies grinned back at her slight flush. All three of the women entered their numbers into my phone at one point throughout the evening. Mary Jo asked me brashly if she may give me her number right at the beginning, and the others made sure they weren't left behind. I asked Jan out on a date 2 days later. She recommended that, just to be fair, I should give Mary Jo and Ellie a call and make some more advances. I have no doubt that you won't be let down. Then, armed with knowledge, you may decide whether to proceed with 1, 2, or all 3 of us, she exclaimed. I told her that sounded like a nice concept and we both chuckled. I had a great time on each occasion, so it worked out really well. I made the difficult decision to give Jan a chance as the person we should forward with. When I called her to ask her out again, she questioned, are you going to keep dating all 3 of us? I know that, but I kind of thought you would give me the opportunity to lock you down first. Overly forward. Mary Jo will inquire, I'm sure of it. Don't be too bold, I reassured her. On our following date, we had our first date. No, that would be a tremendous understatement. We spent half the night making love. It's true that neither of us was the same person we were at 25, but experience and feeling have a lot to offer. A terrible amount. Before my hard-on finally softened and I eased out of her, we passionately kissed for a few more minutes. She was practically instantly asleep in my arms. The next morning, I felt her thrusting back into my morning wood as I woke up. We made very delicate love while she mentioned that she was a little hurting, and then we lay together in our afterglow. A few minutes later, she whispered to me, vanilla for the win. I dated Jan for 6 months before proposing to her. Since I didn't really care and that phase of my life was long since finished, I never questioned her if she continued to be friends with Fiona or if they ever mentioned me. When she stopped crying after I asked her to marry me, she informed me that she would never pull a Fiona on me, so at least she gave it some thought. A single man and woman. And that's it. For some, it might be plain, but for me, it's ideal, she remarked. Last-minute revision. A few months after Fiona discovered her closest friend was seeing her ex-husband, the couple's relationship came to an end. You stole my husband, you woman, Fiona said to me, recalling the exchange. No, I didn't. You relinquished him. He got you divorced, Jan answered. You've got Neville now. Oh, right, Fiona muttered to herself. I discovered out later that Neville had left Fiona and their little son several years later, but they were never married, so they didn't need to file for divorce. My kids told me that Fiona had turned into a shrew, telling Neville that she didn't love being a mother at a period in her life when she ought to have been enjoying her grandkids and her former successes. It seemed that his assertiveness in the bedroom had reached its limit, and they disagreed on a lot of issues concerning their daily lives. My daughter informed me that one day when she came home from work, she found a note on the kitchen table. Crap happens, was my terse response. My comment, it appears like their story ended happily. Do you folks like these short videos? Tell me in the comments section below, hit the bell, and I'll see you in the next one.